Mark Ellison lived alone in a second-floor apartment at the edge of the city. It wasn't anything special, just a one-bedroom unit above a bakery that always smelled faintly of cinnamon and grease. The walls were thin, the radiator rattled, like a tambourine when it kicked on, and the only good thing about the place was the way the morning sun filtered through the blinds. It was the kind of apartment people passed through, not one they stayed in. Mark didn't mind. He wasn't looking for forever. Not anymore. He sat on the worn couch with his dinner in his lap, poking at a frozen meal that hadn't quite heated all the way through. On the coffee table sat a bottle of beer, half empty and warm. In front of him the television crackled, static. Again. Mark sighed and leaned forward to adjust the old remote. The TV was a bulky, boxy thing with faded plastic and a screen that bulged outward like an old man's gut. He'd had it for years, too stubborn or too broke to replace it. Lately, it had been acting up. The picture cut out more and more, often replaced by nothing but grey and white fuzz. Tonight there was no picture at all, just the soft, relentless hiss of white noise. He hit the side of the television with the heel of his palm. The screen flickered once like it was thinking about cooperating, then returned to static. Mark sat back with a frustrated groan. "Figures," he muttered. He considered turning it off, but something about the quiet hiss filled the apartment in a way silence couldn't. It was background noise. Like a fan at night or distant traffic, it made the emptiness feel a little less empty. He picked at his food. On the screen, the fuzz shifted in waves, dancing like a silent storm. As he chewed, Mark noticed something odd. There was a shape in the static. At first, he thought it was just a trick of the eye, maybe the way the lines twisted and folded. But the longer he stared, the more certain he became. A faint outline, almost like a shadow standing in the middle of the screen. He leaned forward, squinting. His fingers hovered over the remote. The shape didn't move. It didn't fade. It was just there. He blinked. The shape was gone. Mark let out a nervous laugh, rubbing at his tired eyes. "I need to get out more," he said aloud. He turned off the TV, finishing his lukewarm meal in silence. That night, Mark lay in bed staring. At the ceiling, the static still played in his head. It was funny, he thought, how something so meaningless, just noise, could stick with you, could make you feel like you'd missed something important. He didn't dream, or if he did, he couldn't remember. The next morning, Mark brewed his coffee and scrolled through his phone. He sent a message to his friend Dana, asking if she still had that spare TV she'd mentioned once. "My old one's finally dying. Got anything that works?" She replied with a laughing emoji and said she'd check. Mark smiled and took a sip of coffee. The window was open just a crack, and the early spring breeze made the curtains sway gently. Maybe it was time for a new start, a new TV, a new routine. Maybe something different would shake him out of the slump he'd been in for months. The sea. Day passed quietly. Mark worked from home, doing remote tech support for a furniture company. He spent most of the afternoon telling people how to reset their routers or update firmware on their smart couches. Nothing exciting, but it paid the rent. That night, he turned the TV on again. Static. No sound this time, just silence. The screen shimmered like a restless pond, the pattern moving slowly, hypnotically. Mark sat down and stared, almost against his will. And there it was again, the shape. This time, it was clearer. Not just a vague outline, but something almost human. Like a person standing behind frosted glass, arms at their sides, head slightly tilted. Mark swallowed. Okay, that's weird. He reached for the remote, but didn't press anything. Was it a reflection? He looked behind him. The apartment was dim, the only light coming from the kitchen. Nothing stood in the room that could make a shape like that. His eyes went back to the screen, still there. He stood slowly, walking toward the TV. As he got closer, the figure seemed to fade, becoming part of the static again. He reached out and touched the screen. It was cold. He laughed nervously, shaking his head. Just a trick, nothing there. Still, when he stepped back, the figure seemed to return, barely visible. But there, Mark turned off the TV. This time, he didn't sleep easily. He lay in the dark, listening to every creak of the old apartment. He kept thinking he'd hear the static again, that low, constant whisper. But the night passed without incident. By the time morning came, Mark had convinced himself it was just stress, a tired brain looking for patterns in the noise. That was all. He had no reason to worry. But still, he avoided turning on the TV that evening. Instead, he read a book and let the quiet settle around him. Just as he was about to go to bed, he passed by the living room. He glanced at the dark TV screen. It was off, but he could swear just for a second that he saw a face reflected in the glass. Not his own, just a shadow of one, and then it was gone. Mark didn't mention the TV to anyone the next day. It felt silly, like saying he'd seen a ghost in his microwave or heard footsteps in his fridge. It wasn't real, it couldn't be, but it lingered in the back of his mind, like a splinter. He couldn't find. Dana messaged him mid-morning. "Found the old TV, still works, just heavy. Want to come get it?" Mark stared at the message for a long moment. Part of him wanted to say yes, to toss his busted screen and be done with it. But another part hesitated. As weird as it was, he wanted to see that shape again, just once more, to prove he wasn't imagining things. "Thanks," he wrote back. "Maybe later this week." He told himself it was just because he was busy. That was easier to believe. That evening, Mark sat on the couch with the remote in his lap. He hadn't turned on the TV yet. He just stared at it, heart thudding in his chest like a slow drumbeat. He clicked the power button. Static. Not just fuzz and hiss this time. There was a low hum. Faint like a far-off engine. The picture rolled and shimmered. And there it was. The shape. No mistaking it now. It was real. A figure standing upright, still blurred but more solid than before. The outline was sharper. Shoulders, arms, even. The curve of a head. The head tilted slightly to one side as if studying him. Mark sat frozen. His mouth had gone dry. "Hello?" he said quietly, feeling ridiculous the moment the word left his lips. Nothing happened. The figure didn't move. Stood up, slowly approaching the screen. The closer he got, the harder it became to see the figure. It faded back into the haze. But as soon as he stepped away again, there it was, always in the middle, always watching. Mark grabbed his phone and snapped a picture of the screen. He stared at the photo. Static. Nothing unusual. No figure, just noise. He tried again. Same result. He recorded a short video. When he played it back, just a blur of white and grey. The shape wasn't there. Not on camera, only to his eyes. Later that night, Mark called Dana. "Hey," he said, "we still on for the TV?" "Sure," she said. "You want to grab it tomorrow?" He hesitated. "Yeah, I think I should." She was quiet for a second. "Okay, Mark. I'm fine," he lied. "Just tired of dealing with this thing. Cool, just don't hurt your back lifting it, it's ancient." They said goodbye, and Mark sat back on the couch, staring at the screen again. He hadn't turned it off. The figure was still there, closer than before. He turned the TV off, but even in the reflection on the black screen, he thought he saw the faint suggestion of someone standing behind him. He didn't look back. The next morning was grey and damp. Rain tapped softly at the windows. Mark bundled up and headed out to pick up the replacement TV. Dana lived on the other side of the city, in a narrow townhouse filled with books, plants, and too many cats. She gave him a hug at the door and motioned toward the bulky old television sitting by her kitchen table. "There she is, the beast," Dana said with a grin. "Still works, has a DVD player too." "Nice," Mark said. "Thanks again." She helped him load it into his car. As they worked, she glanced at him a few times. "You sure you're okay?" Mark paused. "Yeah. Why?" "I don't know. You look off, like you haven't slept." He shrugged. "Weird dreams, maybe. Nothing serious." Dana nodded but didn't look convinced. "TVs are weird," she said suddenly. "All that static and stuff. I used to imagine ghosts lived in there when I was a kid." Mark forced a smile. "Yeah, I used to think the same thing." He didn't say more. Back at his apartment, he unplugged the old TV and pushed it into the corner. He didn't throw it out, not yet. The new one, or rather Dana's old one, was heavy, but it worked. A DVD menu popped up right away when he plugged it in. Clear picture, clean sound, no static. Still, Mark kept glancing at the other TV in the corner. It was unplugged, powerless, just a dark screen reflecting the room, but he felt like it was watching him that night. Mark dreamed he was walking through fog. Thick white static surrounded him in every direction. He couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. And then he saw it. The man. Standing still, his face hidden in the blur. Hands at his sides. Head tilted. Mark tried to run, but his feet wouldn't move. The fog closed in. He woke up gasping, heart racing. His sheets were damp with sweat. It was 3:12 a.m. Mark got up and walked into the living room. The apartment was quiet, but the air felt heavy, like a storm was pressing against the walls. He stared at the unplugged TV. It was on. Static filled the screen, and in the middle stood the man. Clearer now, his features still vague, but unmistakably human. Mark's breath caught in his throat. He reached out and pulled the plug from the wall. The screen went black. Mark backed away slowly. His hands were trembling. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. Mark didn't tell anyone about what happened that night. What could he say? That a TV turned on by itself even though it wasn't plugged in. That he saw a man standing in the static and that he was getting clearer. People would think he was losing it. Maybe he was. He avoided the old TV the next day, didn't look at it, didn't touch it. It sat in the corner like a silent threat, dark and still, but not forgotten. He kept the new TV running most of the day. It was loud and bright, and it helped him feel like everything was normal. He streamed shows he didn't care about, turned up the volume too high, tried to drown out the memory of that humming static, that shape, that tilted head. But late in the evening, as he passed the hallway mirror, something made him stop. There was a flicker behind him. Just for a second, he spun around. Nothing, just his living room, both TVs sitting where they always did. He shook his head and muttered, "I need more sleep." That night, as he was brushing his teeth, the lights flickered. Once, twice, then went back to normal. Mark stood there, toothbrush in hand, staring into the bathroom mirror. His reflection looked pale. The bags under his eyes had grown darker. Behind him, he thought he saw a blur again, something tall, fuzzy. He turned fast, heart racing. Nothing. He finished brushing and went straight to bed. But when he lay down, the room felt wrong, heavy, like something was waiting. He closed his eyes and dreamed of the static again. He was walking through the fog. Everything buzzed softly, like white noise pressed into the air. The ground beneath his feet was smooth and cold, like glass. The man stood ahead of him again, but this time he moved. One step forward. Mark froze. Another step. The man's face was still a blur, but his outline was sharper. He wore something like a coat, dark, heavy. His hands were long and still at his sides. Mark tried to run, but the dream held him in place. The fog thickened. The man raised one hand and pointed straight at him. Mark woke up with a shout, sitting upright in bed. The room was dark, silent, but across the apartment in the corner where the old TV sat, he saw the faint glow of static. He swore out loud and grabbed his phone, using the flashlight to check the plug. Still unplugged. The screen was lit anyway, crackling softly, and the man was there, standing just inside the static, closer, closer than ever before. Mark backed away slowly. He didn't turn the screen off. He didn't speak. He just closed the bedroom door and stayed under the covers until the morning light crept in. The next day, Mark called in sick. He couldn't concentrate, couldn't fake normal. He paced the apartment, glancing at the old TV every few minutes. In the daylight, the screen was black again. No glow, no sound, but he knew it was waiting. He searched online for explanations, static interference, power surges, ghost stories. He found articles about old analog TVs picking up weird signals, but nothing like this. Nothing that matched what he was seeing. He posted on a forum under a fake name. Has anyone ever seen something inside TV static, like a person, not a hallucination? Something real? No one replied. He didn't expect them to. That night he unplugged everything. Both TVs, his computer, even his phone charger. He sat in the dark with a flashlight in his lap, waiting. Midnight passed. 1 o'clock, still nothing. At 2:17 a.m. the static came back, soft at first, then louder. The TV was glowing again, even unplugged. The man was standing in the center of the screen, and now Mark could see his eyes. They weren't clear, just two dark holes where eyes should be. Empty, deep, staring straight at him. Mark didn't speak. He couldn't. The man raised his hand again, pointed. This time he pressed his hand to the inside of the screen. Static flickered around his fingers like lightning trapped behind glass. Mark stumbled backward, heart pounding. The air was filled with a low hum now, like a power station buzzing just out of sight. It filled the apartment, made the walls shake, and then suddenly the screen went black. The hum vanished. Silence returned. Mark stood in the middle of the room, shaking. He couldn't do this alone. In the morning he called Dana again. "Can I come over?" he asked. "Yeah, of course. You okay?" He didn't answer. When he arrived at her place, she hugged him tight. "You look awful," she said. "Thanks," he muttered. She poured them both coffee and sat across from him at the kitchen table. Her cats circled their feet like little ghosts. Mark took a long breath. "I think something's wrong with my old TV," Dana raised an eyebrow. "Like haunted wrong or just broken?" "Haunted," he said flatly. "Maybe." She blinked. "Okay, talk to me." He told her everything, not just about the static, but the man inside it, the dreams, the hum, the unplugged screen. When he finished, she didn't laugh. "I believe you," she said quietly. Mark looked up. "Really? Something like this happened to my uncle. Years ago. He used to say the radio talked to him in Morse code. After he died, they found his old shortwave still playing static. It was unplugged too." Mark stared at her. "What happened to him?" She looked down. "He disappeared. Vanished one night, no signs of a break-in, just gone." Mark felt cold. She reached across the table and grabbed his hand. "You're not crazy, but you need help. Let's figure this out. Together." Mark nodded slowly. For the first time in days, he felt a little less alone. That night he didn't go home. He stayed on Dana's couch with her two cats curled at his feet. The apartment was quiet and warm, safe. But just before he fell asleep, he looked over at the dark TV in the corner. And for a split second, He saw a flash of static and the silhouette of a man still watching. Mark didn't sleep much, even on Dana's couch. Every creak in the walls made him sit up. Every rustle from the cats felt like a whisper in the dark. He kept expecting the glow of static, but it never came. Morning arrived slow and grey. Rain tapped gently on the windows. Dana was already in the kitchen making coffee when Mark sat up, bleary-eyed and heavy. "You look like a man who didn't sleep," she said softly. "Not much," he admitted. "Nightmares. No dreams this time. Just waiting. Like I thought. It might find me here." Dana nodded and handed him a mug. "It didn't. Not yet," Mark said. They sat in silence for a while. The clink of the spoon in Dana's cup was the only sound. Her apartment felt safer somehow, even with the weight of Mark's fear hovering like a storm cloud. "We need to understand what this thing is," she said finally. Mark sipped his coffee. "I've looked. I've searched everything. Nobody's saying this, not exactly." Dana leaned forward. "Then we look differently, not like people trying to fix a broken TV, like people investigating a haunting." Mark raised an eyebrow. "You really think that's what it is?" "I don't know, but let's treat it like one. Start from the beginning. What happened the first night?" Mark set his cup down. "I turned on the TV. Static. But there was a shape in it. It was faint, like my eyes were playing tricks. I watched it for a long time. Then I saw it again the next night. Clearer. Every night since then it's been closer, even when the TV's unplugged." Dana frowned. "You said it hums?" "Yeah. Low and deep, like a machine. It feels like the sound is everywhere." She got up and returned with a notebook and pen. "Okay, we're documenting this. We'll make a timeline, details, anything strange. You're not crazy, Mark. I believe you. But let's be smart about it." He nodded, feeling a quiet sense of relief. She believed him. That mattered. That afternoon, Dana came back from a bookstore carrying 3 dusty paperbacks, one on analog technology, one on paranormal theories, and one titled Modern Urban Legends. She dropped them on the table. "Let's see what weirdos before us have written." Mark flipped through the one about analog signals. He paused at a highlighted section. In rare cases, television static can pick up patterns or symbols from background frequencies. Though usually dismissed as coincidence, reports of recognizable shapes or faces have been documented. Dana looked up. "Documented?" Mark read aloud. "Anomalies have included vague figures, ghostly sounds, and moments of synchronization with electrical devices not connected to the set." They both looked at each other. "That's what's happening," Mark said. "It's real." Dana grabbed her notebook and jotted it down. But something about the air had shifted. The apartment didn't feel as safe anymore. Later that evening, Mark helped Dana feed her cats and tidy up. They tried to act normal. Light conversation. A show playing quietly on the background TV, but as the sun dipped lower, a tension filled the space. Something unseen. Mark paused in the hallway and rubbed his arms. Goosebumps had risen without warning. Dana noticed. "You feel that too?" He nodded slowly. "Like the air just changed." "Pressure drop?" she asked. "Or something else?" Mark walked over to her TV and turned it off. The screen darkened. No static. No glow. But as they both looked at the blank glass, they saw it. Faint and wavering. A shadow, not behind them, not in the reflection, inside the screen. Mark stepped back. No, it followed me." "It's using the signal," Dana whispered. "It doesn't need your TV, just a screen." The shadow flickered, then vanished. Mark's breathing grew shallow. "We need to stop it." That night, Dana insisted on staying up with Mark. They made coffee, lit candles, sat at the table, watching. The TV across the room. At 2 a.m., the temperature in the apartment dropped. The heater was on, but they both shivered. 17 a.m. The screen turned on. Neither of them touched it. The TV glowed faintly with white and grey static. And there he was, the man, standing in the center of the storm, still and silent. Dana gasped softly. "I see him. Mark, I see him too." Mark felt a strange wave of both fear and relief. He wasn't alone anymore. The man's face was still hard to make out, but his features were forming. The faint shape of a mouth, hollow eyes, a coat with sharp shoulders. He reached up and pressed his hand to the screen again. The static hissed louder. Dana grabbed her notebook and started scribbling. Still no sound besides the hiss, no mouth movement, just the hum and glow. The man leaned forward. His hand stayed pressed to the glass, but the pressure behind it seemed real, like he was trying to push through. The edges of the TV screen shimmered. Dana stood. "Mark, what if it's not just watching? What if it's learning how to come through?" Mark didn't answer. He couldn't look away. The man's mouth twitched, a shape. Then, just for a heartbeat, his lips moved, but not in speech. A smile, crooked, wrong. Then, just like before, the screen went black. Mark's heart was racing. Dana dropped her notebook. "Did you see that?" she asked, voice shaking. He smiled. Dana was pale. "He's getting stronger." Mark swallowed. "And closer." The next morning they didn't talk much. The fear from the night before hung thick in the air. Mark stared at his hands. They were shaking. Dana reached out and held them gently. "We're not done yet," she said, "but I think we just crossed a line." Mark nodded. He's not just in the static anymore. He's trying to get out. Dana's notebook was filling up fast. She had labeled the top of the page, Night 4 Manifestation Attempt, then underlined it twice. Mark sat beside her on the couch, rubbing his eyes. He hadn't been home in 3 days. He wasn't sure he'd ever go back. Dana turned the page and wrote, 2:17 a.m. The man smiled. Screen shimmered. Possible breach? Subject appears more human. Smile suggests awareness, possibly intent. Mark read over her shoulder. "You're treating this like a science experiment." Dana didn't look up. "Because if I don't, I'll panic, and panic helps him." Mark leaned back, staring at the dark TV. He smiled, Dana. "He knows we're watching." "I know." She closed the notebook. "But now we test something else." That afternoon they drove to a nearby pawn shop. Dana picked up a portable analog TV, one of those old battery-powered kinds, with an antenna and a built-in radio, the kind people used in storms before smartphones. They brought it back to her apartment and set it on the table. "What are we testing?" Mark asked. Dana clicked the knobs, adjusting the static. "If it's tied to a signal, maybe a frequency, it won't matter what screen we use. If we tune it just right, maybe we can find him." Mark watched nervously as the screen buzzed to life. Grey waves, hissing, white snow. He stared, half expecting the man to appear right away, but it was just noise. Dana adjusted the dial slowly. Click, buzz, click. A sharp whine cut through the static, then settled. And there, faint but unmistakable, was a voice. Mark froze. "Are you listening?" Dana turned the volume up. The voice crackled in and out as if it were underwater. Male, slow, almost mechanical. "I see. You..." The words came in pieces, like they didn't belong to this world. Dana looked at Mark. "It's him." Mark's skin prickled. "It's his voice. Don't turn away." The radio buzzed again, then went silent. The screen returned to plain static. Dana turned off the set. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, that's new." Mark's chest was tight. How is that even possible? The TV isn't plugged in, it doesn't have Wi-Fi, it's not connected to anything. Dana paced. Analog tech isn't like digital. It picks up weird stuff sometimes, ghost frequencies, dead stations. Maybe he lives in one of those. Mark frowned. You think he's trapped in a broadcast? Or using one? I don't know, but this proves he's not bound to your apartment. He can move. Mark's mouth went dry, so there's no hiding. Dana nodded grimly. But maybe there's a way to talk to him. That night, they set up both the analog TV and Dana's larger one side by side. One buzzing with static, the other blank and silent. Dana pulled out a tape recorder, an old model. She found in her closet from college. It still worked. They turned off all the lights. At 2:17 a.m., the air went cold. The analog TV hissed louder. The screen shimmered, and the man returned. He stepped forward in the fog of static, closer than ever. His face, though still warped, now showed outlines of features, cheekbones, a mouth that twitched with emotion. Dana pressed record. "Can you hear us?" she asked clearly. The man's head tilted slightly. Mark swallowed. "Why are you watching me?" For a moment, the static intensified. The man raised a hand again and pressed it to the screen. The radio crackled. "Not watching?" Dana leaned in. "Then what are you doing?" "Waiting." Mark took a step forward. "For what?" "You opened it." The man's mouth moved now, but the words came from the radio, disjointed, distant. "The frequency is home." Dana blinked. "What does that mean?" The man leaned closer until his face filled the screen. Distorted, dark, not quite human. Now. "Oh, see." The lights flickered. The TV buzzed sharply. Then blackness, total silence. Dana clicked off the recorder. They stared at each other. "He's not just a ghost," Mark said. "He's something else." Dana nodded. "He's using the signal like a door." The next morning they played the tape back. The voice was still there, but this time there were more words. Whispers behind the main voice. Soft, repeating. Mark turned the volume up. "Mark," the whispers said. "Come closer. Step through." Dana hit pause. "He's calling you." Mark stood up. "No, no way. I'm not going near that screen." "But you already did," she said gently. "That first night, remember? You stared for hours." Mark's chest tightened. "I didn't mean to." "You let him in, Mark." He looked at the screen again, dark and innocent in the daylight. "No," he said, "this isn't my fault." But part of him wasn't sure. That night, the TVs stayed off. They didn't record, didn't ask questions. They just waited. The apartment was quiet until 2:17. The analog TV clicked on by itself. No power, no signal, and yet the man was back. But this time, he was smiling from the start. Mark couldn't sleep anymore, even when the TVs were off, even when the apartment was quiet. He'd close his eyes and see the man, smiling in the static, closer than ever, like he was just one breath away from stepping through the screen, and every night at 2:17 a.m. the man returned. Dana had started calling it the crossing hour. They stopped recording, stopped asking questions. Now it was just about waiting and surviving. By the third day without sleep, Mark's eyes were bloodshot. He paced the apartment like a trapped animal, muttering to himself. Dana tried to calm him, but he wouldn't. "Listen, I let him in," Mark whispered. "I let him in and now I can't shut it off." "Mark." "He's in me now, not just the screens. He watches me even when they're off." Dana stood up and grabbed his shoulders. "Listen to me. This thing feeds on your fear. You're giving it what it wants." Mark looked past her, toward the dark screen across the room. "He doesn't want fear," he whispered. "He wants presence." Dana frowned. "What?" "He wants me with him. On the other side." Dana let go. "Okay, that's enough." But Mark walked to the old analog TV. He sat down in front of it like a child in front of Saturday morning cartoons, and he listened. The faint hum returned, so quiet it felt like it came from behind the walls. The screen remained dark. But Mark was still, breathing slow. Then he whispered, "He's talking again." Dana felt a chill run down her spine. "What's he saying?" Mark's voice came low and strange. "Step through." That night, Dana took the batteries out of the analog TV, unplugged the big one, even flipped the breaker in the apartment. No power, no chance. She handed Mark a cup of chamomile tea and sat him on the couch. "You're not going anywhere," she said. "You're not touching another screen." Mark didn't argue, but at 2:17 a.m., something new happened. The mirror in the hallway clouded over grey mist, like fog in glass. Mark stood up without a word and walked toward it. Dana blocked him. "No, not again." He blinked at her, as if waking up. "What?" "The mirror. You were walking toward it like you were sleepwalking." He turned and looked. The mist was gone, just glass now. But for a moment, only a moment, they both saw something behind their reflections. A face, watching. Dana stepped back. Oh God, he's not in the TV anymore. The next morning, Dana made a decision. "We're leaving." Mark looked up from the couch. His skin was pale, eyes hollow. "What?" "You're not staying here. We're getting rid of everything. Screens, wires, mirrors, anything reflective. We cut him off." Mark didn't answer, so she took the lead. They filled garbage bags with electronics, the TVs, laptops, her tablet, even the microwave and the digital clock. They drove to the dump and threw them in. Mark hesitated at the edge of the pit, watching the smashed screen of the analog TV. Dana grabbed his arm. "Let it go." He nodded slowly. And for the first time in days, he smiled, a weak smile, but real. That night, they stayed in a cabin just outside town. No power, no cell signal, nothing but trees and stars. It was quiet. No hum, no static, no faces in glass. Mark sat by the fireplace and stared into the flames. Dana brought over 2 blankets and sat beside him. "It's gone," she said. "We cut the cord." Mark didn't answer. She touched his hand. "Mark." He turned his head, and for the first time since they met, his eyes looked wrong, empty, like something else was wearing his face. Dana gasped and pulled back. Then he blinked, and just like that, he was normal again. "Dana?" he asked. "What's wrong?" She didn't know what to say. At 2:17 a.m., Mark woke suddenly. He was alone. The fire was out. The room was dark. No noise. He walked slowly to the small bathroom, looked in the mirror, just his face. But then the glass flickered, a ripple, and the man stepped forward, not from the mirror, but from behind Mark's reflection. Mark couldn't. "Poof!" The man's mouth moved. But this time Mark heard the words inside his own head. "You left the signal behind, but I never needed it." Mark's vision swam. The mirror pulsed like water. "You saw me, and now I see through you." Mark stumbled backward. "Stop." "I'm not in the static anymore." The reflection changed. Now, he was inside the mirror, not the man. Mark, pounding on the glass from the other side. Dana woke to a crash. Mark was on the floor, soaked in sweat, breathing fast. She rushed to him. "Mark, talk to me." "What happened?" He grabbed her arm. "Don't. Look in the mirror." She helped him up and led him back to the couch. "Okay, no mirrors, no screens, no reflections, nothing." Mark looked at her, eyes filled with terror. "I think I'm losing where I end." And he begins. Dana stayed up the rest of the night, watching the shadows, listening for any hum. But the static didn't need sound anymore. It was inside them now. They left the cabin at dawn. Mark didn't speak much. He just stared out the window, blinking slowly, as if the world outside looked different now, warped, too bright, too sharp. Dana drove in silence, hands white-knuckled on the wheel. When they reached her apartment, she almost turned back. The place felt off. Even with no screens, no mirrors, no electronics, there was something wrong in the air, heavy, like the moment before a thunderstorm. Mark went to the bedroom to lie down. Dana made tea. She didn't touch her phone. It was off, buried in a drawer. She hadn't looked at it in days. As she poured the water, the kettle let out a strange hiss. Not steam. Something else. Whispers. She froze. Then the whispers were gone. Just her imagination. Maybe. She carried the tea to the living room and stopped. Mark was standing in front of the blank TV. It had been unplugged, left behind, but now it was back, plugged in, humming. Dana's heart dropped. "Mark?" she asked slowly. "Where did that come from?" He didn't answer Mark. He turned and smiled. Only it wasn't his smile. She dropped the mug. It shattered on the floor. Mark blinked, looked down, then back at her, confused. "Dana," she took a step back. "You were gone. Just now. You weren't you." He looked at his hands like they didn't belong to him. "I don't know what's happening anymore." Dana pointed to the TV. "Did you plug that in?" "No, I didn't even notice it was there." They both stared at the screen. It was black, but faintly moving, like it was breathing. Dana ran to the kitchen, grabbed scissors and cut the cord. The screen blinked. Then a low voice echoed, not from the TV but from inside the walls. The screen was just the start. They froze. Mark whispered, "He's bleeding through." Over the next few days it got worse. Reflections rippled in windows. Light bulbs buzzed with whispers. The floor creaked in patterns like footsteps behind them. At night the apartment made sounds no building should make, wet static-laced gurgles, a deep thrum in the pipes. Breathing, not from them, from something else. Dana started recording on cassette tapes, trying to capture proof, but the tapes always played back silence. Mark tried writing, drawing, anything to stay sane, but everything he put on paper turned into the same image, a face, blurred, watching and always getting closer. One night Dana found Mark sitting in the bathtub, clothes soaked, lights off. His eyes were wide. "He's inside the water," he said. "He's learning to move, through more than just screens." She helped him out, shaking. "We need to leave," she whispered. But Mark shook his head. "He'll follow. Then we run. He wants that. He spreads every time we go." Dana stared at him. "You think we're helping him grow?" Mark nodded. "He's like a signal, a virus. The more we notice, the stronger he becomes." Dana sank to the floor beside him. "What does he want?" Mark looked at her, hollow-eyed. "Everything." The next day, Dana called someone she hadn't talked to in years, her Uncle Walter, a retired electrical engineer and a recluse with more conspiracy theories than friends. But he listened. When she finished, there was a long silence. Then, "You're describing a signal entity." Dana blinked. "A what?" "Most people think ghosts are tied to places, but some are tied to frequencies, patterns, things we don't see unless we're tuned in." Dana sat down. "You're saying it's real?" "I've only heard rumors, a broadcast from nowhere, a face in the static. But once you've seen it, it knows." "Knows what?" Walter's voice dropped. "Where to find you." Dana wrote everything down. Mark stopped sleeping completely. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt hands pressing against the inside of his skull, trying to get out. They burned sage, wore headphones, slept with blindfolds, but it didn't stop, because he was in the cracks now, between wires, between thoughts, between people. At 2:17 a.m. that night, the wall in the hallway cracked. not like drywall, like glass. Mark stood in front of it, touching the split. A faint blue light pulsed behind the surface. He turned to Dana. "It's not about the screen anymore. The screen was just the window." "Then what is this?" she asked. Mark looked at the wall again. The door. The crack in the wall grew each night. It wasn't a normal crack. It didn't splinter like paint or drywall. It pulsed softly, like it was alive. A blue-white glow shimmered inside, and when Dana pressed her ear to it, she didn't hear building. Noises. She heard whispers, faint, endless, calling Mark's name. They stopped using the lights, covered the mirrors with towels, left their phones dead and buried in a drawer. Mark sat in the corner now, head between his knees, rocking slowly. Dana paced the apartment, searching for anything human, anything solid. But even the air felt strange, like it was thinner, humming, like the world had been tuned to the wrong frequency. The following night, Dana dreamed she was underwater. She opened her eyes and saw static, swirling like clouds around her face. Mark stood across from her, floating in the fog. Reaching out. Behind him, the man stood taller than ever, fully formed, skinless and flickering, grinning. She screamed and woke up gasping, soaked in sweat. The clock read 2:17 a.m. The crack in the wall had opened. Wider, a long, jagged tear. Inside was nothing but white noise, moving like mist. Mark stood before it, arms loose at his sides, like he'd been waiting. Dana ran to him. "Mark! No!" He turned slowly. His face was pale, blank. "I can hear everything now," he said. Voices, they're welcoming." Dana grabbed his arm. "This isn't you, this is him." But Mark's eyes shimmered, filled with that same soft glow. He says, "I don't have to be afraid anymore." Dana pulled him back from the opening, but the static pulled harder. The door was open and something was coming through, not the man, something wider. Our presence, a signal, a shadow without shape. Dana screamed and shoved Mark away from the wall. The air bent. A tone, high and shrill, filled the room, like a broken speaker screaming. Dana clutched her head. Mark fell to the floor. The crack pulsed. Once, then twice, and then closed, just like that. Gone. Dana dragged Mark to the bathroom. He was shaking, eyes shut tight, breathing shallow. "I saw him," he whispered. "I saw what he is." Dana crouched beside him. "What is he?" Mark opened his eyes. "He's not a ghost, not a man. He's a memory, a signal that remembers itself." Dana didn't understand. "What does that mean?" "He was broadcast once, long ago. A face in a test pattern. An accident, a glitch. But someone saw him, and that gave him form." Mark shook harder. "He doesn't need screens. He just needs attention. He's like a parasite. The more we look, the more he becomes." Dana felt cold settle into her bones. "And now?" Mark looked at her, eyes hollow. I think he's trying to become real." They packed what little they had and left the apartment. Dana didn't tell the landlord, didn't leave a note. They just left. A week passed in hiding. They moved every day, rented cheap rooms with no TVs, no internet, slept in shifts, ate canned food. It almost felt safe. Almost. Until one night in a gas station bathroom, Dana glanced in the mirror and saw a second reflection behind her. Not Mark, not anyone human, just eyes, watching and smiling. She punched the mirror, shattered it. Her hands bled, but the image stayed burned into her mind. They weren't free. Back at the motel, Dana sat on the bed, bandaged and shaking. Mark handed her a glass of water. "We can't run," he said quietly. "Not anymore." She nodded. "So what do we do?" He looked at her for a long time. Go back. Back to the apartment. Back to the wall. To the tear in reality that had once tried to take him. Dana thought he was crazy, but she also knew he was right. This thing wouldn't stop, not unless they faced it. They returned just before midnight. The place was dead silent, dust on the counters. The air smelled old, but the crack in the wall was there, smaller than before, but still glowing faintly. Mark stood before it. Dana stayed by the door. If you do this, you might not come back. Mark nodded. I have to know what he is. Dana stepped forward, took his hand. I'm not letting you go alone, he smiled, his real smile. Then we go together. The static swirled. The crack opened, and they stepped through. They stepped into the static. It didn't feel like walking, it felt like falling. No wind, no gravity, just light, endless flickering light. White noise buzzed against their skin like sand. The air was heavy with old signals, fragments of sound, distorted music, words that had been spoken once and then lost forever. Dana tried to speak. Her voice vanished in the hum. Mark reached for her hand. His fingers shimmered, flickering between solid and something else. Like he wasn't entirely there. Neither of them were. The ground beneath them looked like glass, but inside it, beneath their feet, images played, old commercials, forgotten sitcoms, static-covered faces mouthing silent screams, and among it all, him. The man in the static, watching, smiling, always smiling. Time didn't pass here. There was no sun, no shadows, no sky. Just a vast, shifting landscape of flickers and echoes. Dana pointed ahead. A shape loomed in the distance, a tall tower pulsing with light. Mark nodded. That's where he is. They walked. As they moved, they passed things, objects, a tricycle, rusted and half-melted. A television with no screen, a rotary phone hanging from nothing off the hook. Voices leaked from it. Do you see me now? Please come back. We were never alone. Dana stepped away, heart racing. Mark touched her shoulder. It's memories, broadcasts, things that got stuck. Are we stuck? She asked. He didn't answer. The tower grew larger as they approached. It looked like an old broadcast antenna, twisted and massive, rising into a sky that wasn't there. A door waited at its base. Mark reached for the handle. The door swung open on its own. Inside, it was dark, but not silent. The hum was louder here, alive, like a heartbeat made of static. The walls rippled with old footage, grainy faces, blinking eyes, lost footage from decades past. At the center of the chamber stood a figure, the man in the eerie static, fully formed, 7 feet tall, skin flickering like a broken signal, mouth wide, but never moving, eyes empty. Mark stepped forward. You pulled me here. Why? The man didn't move, but the room answered. The walls trembled with 1,000 voices speaking as one. You saw me. You gave me shape. Now you will give me form. Dana grabbed Mark's hand. No. The man tilted his head. I was forgotten, trapped in snow, but you remembered. You watched. You noticed. Mark shook his head. You're not real. The room flickered, reality bent. I am as real as you believe. And soon they all will. Suddenly, Dana saw a flicker of the real world through the walls, a blurry glimpse of her apartment, her phone, the signal blinking back on. The man was broadcasting, trying to reach through. We have to stop it, Dana said, before he spreads. Mark turned to her, eyes wide. He's not just trying to escape, he's trying to overwrite. The man stepped forward. The ground cracked beneath his feet. You are the source, the doorway. He pointed at Mark. And you will open me. The moo chamber began to fall apart. Walls shattered into clouds of light and noise. The antenna groaned, its form unraveling. Mark turned to Dana. I know what to do. She grabbed his shirt. No. Whatever you're thinking, don't. He pressed his forehead to hers. If I let him finish, he'll reach the whole world. Dana's voice cracked. Don't leave me. I'm not. I promise. Then he stepped back and walked into the center of the room. The man opened his arms. Mark stood still. The signal surged. Light exploded, bright as 1,000 suns. The hum became a scream. Then, silence. Dana opened her eyes. She was back in the apartment alone, no static, no hum, no crack in the wall, just silence. And Mark, gone. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. No static, no flicker, no Mark. Just Dana. She stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the wall where the crack used to be. There was no trace, no glow, no pulse. It was like it had never existed, but she knew it had. Days passed. She didn't eat much. Didn't sleep much either. She walked the apartment slowly, opening doors, touching walls, turning off lights she didn't remember turning on. Sometimes she thought she heard Mark's voice, soft, calling her name. But when she turned, there was nothing, just silence. She kept the TV unplugged, never used. Her phone. Left the radio untouched on the shelf. Anything that carried a signal she avoided. She even threw out the microwave. Anything that buzzed or blinked or hummed felt wrong now. Felt like him. One night, she dreamed of snow. Not real snow, TV snow, static. It fell gently around her, soft and cold. Mark stood ahead in the distance, half faded. She ran toward him. But the closer she got, the more he blurred, until all that was left was the shape of a man, tall, still watching. She woke up crying. It had been 2 weeks, no sign of Mark, no sign of him, just echoes, memories, the kind that hum quietly in the back of your mind, waiting to be remembered. One morning, Dana heard a knock. She didn't answer. Then the phone rang, despite being dead for days. She didn't pick up. That night, the ceiling light flickered once, just once, then went dark. She couldn't keep running, couldn't keep hiding. So she did what Mark would have done. She started recording again, but this time by hand. She filled notebooks with everything that happened, the static, the voice, the tower, the truth. She didn't know if anyone would believe her, but maybe someday someone might listen and understand. 3 weeks later, she returned to the cabin, the same one they had run from. She brought only a backpack and her notebooks. The TV was still gone, the fireplace cold, but the woods were quiet, the sky full of stars. No buzz, no hum, no whispers. She stayed there a while, wrote during the day, read old books, sat by the fire. At night she dreamed of Mark. Sometimes he was smiling, sometimes just standing in the distance, but always there, watching. Then one evening, as she flipped through a notebook, she found something she hadn't written. 3 words, scrawled in the margin. The quiet channel. She stared at it, then again. Beneath it, smaller, tune in. She didn't know what it meant, not at first, but a week later, while hiking behind the cabin, she found a rusted satellite dish hidden among the trees. Dead. Broken, but familiar, like it had once been tuned to something. That night she sat in front of the fireplace, stared into the flames and whispered, "I'm listening." Nothing happened. No burst of static, no flicker in the flames, just peace. But inside, something stirred, not fear, not dread, a kind of quiet understanding. The man in the static was gone, but she could still feel the edge of him, the whisper of the signal buried dormant. waiting for someone to notice again. But not tonight. Tonight, he was silent. Dana closed the notebook, set it on the table beside her, and whispered one last thing into the fire. "I remember you." A faint buzz danced through the air, then faded. Somewhere far away, a television flickers on in an empty room. The screen glows white. Static hums softly. A figure appears, blurred and distant. It does not move, but it watches, and waits, and waits, and waits.